I felt Biden was doing his absolute best not to be offensive to anybody in that speech today, and I thought he probably carried it off.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. You could portray this visit, Nigel, as somewhat of a failure. First of all, President Biden didn't spend very much time hearing facts. He was here for about 18 hours, and I think he spent the majority of that in beds. Also, we know, you look at the streets of Belfast today, this was not a Bill Clinton moment in 1995. There were thousands, but not many of them, on the streets of Belfast to welcome President Biden today, but no real sense of enthusiasm. And then you're right in pointing out the DUP, Jeffrey Donaldson this afternoon saying that this visit had not changed the political weather here. The dynamics of politics had not changed because of this Biden visit. However, let's flip it around the other way. Let's look at what President Biden had to say. I felt he threaded a very careful line today between talking about the need for power sharing, the need for compromise, looking back at the hard-won victories of the Good Friday Agreement 25 years on, while at the same time a kind of recognition that he needs to listen to unionism. He did say today that he was here to listen. He met briefly with the political leaders. Added to that a real effort during that speech to talk about his British heritage as much as his Irish heritage, and also that carrot that he kind of dangled in front of unionism to say, you know what, I'm not going to force you to get the executive back up again. He said that was your judgment to make, but if you do, there could be billions of dollars of investment for Northern Ireland. And also, I think a visit that Downing Street will be happy with, Nigel, and that's because, again, Rishi Sunak got to meet with President Biden for 45 minutes this morning. It's the third time they've met since he became Prime Minister. Now, nothing substantive came out of that, but Downing Street are making a really concerted effort to try and mend some of the broken relationships with the White House over the last couple of years. We'll have to see how that progresses over time, but there will be pleased, of course, that he did bring up the Windsor framework. So all in all, I think not necessarily a bad visit, but you're right in suggesting that actually the majority of what President Biden's come to Ireland to do will be what happens over the next couple of days down in Dublin, rather than up here in Belfast.
Yeah, it was a very cursory visit, and he lived up to his name of Sleepy Joe, as you say, by spending more time in bed than he actually spent out on engagements. But he was really very strongly in support of the Windsor framework, something that just isn't going to work with the DUP. Sunak, of course, thrilled, almost fawning, I thought, over the American president. But in summation, Darren, as far as the UK is concerned, what did this trip actually achieve?
Largely not very much. You're right in saying the Prime Minister has gone to extraordinary lengths. I mean, I don't think he needed to turn up last night to greet President Biden off Air Force One. But all in all, it is interesting today when the White House were pushed on this idea, mooted by Arlene Foster actually on GB News last night, that somehow President Biden hates Britain. The White House were pretty firm in trying to bat that away, saying that that was simply untrue. They talked about the G7, they talked about NATO, they talked about the UN Security Council. And I do think on a personal level, Nigel, and we know, I don't think this was true of Boris Johnson or Liz Truss. I think on a personal level, Joe Biden and Rishi Sunak, it's a bit awkward, but I think they do actually get on. And we know that while he's not going to go to the coronation, there is going to be a state visit for Joe Biden at some point before the end of his presidency, and also that Rishi Sunak has been invited to the White House in June. So it is a work in progress, but all in all, as I say, I think Downing Street and the White House will be pleased with this visit. The big question is, will anything change in a couple of months with the DUP and the restoration of Stormont? That will be the real test of whether this has actually managed to change the political weather here.